Sports-related injuries are increasing in children, and the long-term effects of repeated head trauma, like CTE, have recently become a topic of debate. To avoid injury in young athletes, it is necessary to stop them from competing in contact. Is it necessary to stop them from competing in contact sports until they get older? I have played hockey and football for most of my life. These sports have heavy contact as part of the game itself. So I've first-hand experience with the type of injuries that can occur in these sports. Deciding whether or not to let your child participate in certain activities from a young age is an important part of parenting. Preventing injuries at a young age can prevent several long-term repercussions for a child. Contact sports can be very dangerous for a young child who hasn't developed enough to protect their brains from injury. Repeated head injuries put children at risk of serious conditions later in life, like CTE. If children are forced to focus too much on one sport, especially a contact sport, sports specialization injuries can occur because their development is impacted. Parents should avoid letting their kids participate in full contact sports before the age of 13 or 14. For sports like hockey, where contact is a fundamental aspect of the game, this means body checking cannot be allowed for younger children. For most youth hockey programs, this is already the case. For sports like football, flag football should be chosen as the safer alternative. To avoid sports specialization injuries, children should be allowed to participate in multiple sports and activities. This way, their bodies are given the chance to fully develop. Contact sports put children at a particularly high risk for brain injuries. So according to an article by the Clay Center for Young Healthy Minds, brain injuries like concussions occur when the brain hits the walls of the skull, causing damage to the brain tissue. So your skull is very good at protecting your brain, but it also means that if your brain hits the walls of your skull, it can cause damage. So if you are hit in a jarring fashion, like in a contact sport, your neck can move violently from side to side, which causes your brain to impact the sides of your skull, which causes damage to the brain tissue. So neck muscles are one of the more important muscles that work to prevent your head from moving in that violent fashion that causes your brain to hit the walls of your skull. But most children don't develop strong enough neck muscles until they hit puberty, which means that until that time, they're more susceptible to their heads being moved violently from side to side, causing them to be more susceptible to injuries. Brain injuries sustained at a young age then put the brain at a high risk of developing CTE and other conditions like that. Again, according to the article by the Clay Center for Young Healthy Minds, children's brains develop fast when they are young, so one brain injury can cause serious developmental problems and increase the likelihood of another injury occurring. So if your brain tissue is damaged when it's still in the developmental stages, you're a lot more likely to have more injuries from other things occurring. So according to an article by the Concussion Legacy Foundation, CTE is a condition caused by repeated traumatic brain injuries. So concussions are included in this, but even smaller, less noticeable hits also occurred, certain brain injuries. It doesn't have to be something that's very noticeable, very obvious. Symptoms of CTE include mood swings, mental illnesses like anxiety and depression, dementia, impaired judgment, memory problems, and others. One concussion at a young age makes a child more susceptible to further brain injuries and therefore CTE and other problems later in life. So sports specialization is another type of injury that can occur. It's not only issues with the brain. So sports specialization can cause children to get injuries that are usually only common in professional athletes or athletes that do their sport year-round. According to an article by UCLA Health, children who are required to constantly practice just one sport or just one sport skill, like pitching, tends to cause them to have a little bit of trouble developing in other ways. So if they're only working on throwing a baseball or playing football, playing wide receiver in football, they don't develop other aspects that they need for later on in life, like balance, or like balance, flexibility, or just normal strength. So if those things become underdeveloped, they're a lot more likely to have injuries that would have been prevented if they would have developed them properly. So in contact sports like football or hockey or anything like that, shoulder injuries and knee injuries are very common because the children don't really get a chance to rest either their shoulders or their knees, so tendons in those areas or bones tend to be hurt more commonly. So contact sports pose a serious danger for young children. Their risk for brain injury is higher because their brains are developing fast, but supportive muscles in the neck are underdeveloped. Impacts can jostle the fragile brains and cause injury to them. If a child does not suffer a brain injury, if their child does suffer a brain injury, their brain development can later be altered, and they're at a higher risk of more injuries and CTE occurring. Brain injuries aren't the only danger though, because sports specialization injuries also occur very commonly in children who aren't allowed to practice other sports. Because of the risk of injury, children should not be allowed to join full contact sports until they reach about middle school age. Until then, there are other alternatives, such as flag football, if you want your child to participate in a football-like thing, or in a no-hit league for something like hockey. Thank you.